All right. Well, welcome to the show today, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My guest today is Sunny Gosal, and this is a really interesting story because Sunny achieved what he thought was his dream. He had a job at Electronic Arts as a designer, and after a while, he started to get itchy feet, and he felt like he was too comfortable. So he wanted to go out and basically start something on his own. So he decided to quit his dream job and venture into entrepreneurship. Now, fair to say, it definitely wasn't a smooth transition. He actually ended up in $40,000 of debt with two failed businesses to his name. He was forced to take a dead end job just to pay the bills. He was overweight, he was depressed, he even lost his girlfriend. And in his words, he was at rock bottom. So, good thing about being at rock bottom though is that you can only go up from there, right? So, over the next 4 years, Sunny became a student of life. He started reading books, he started going to conferences, he started listening to audio programs, and he got in the best physical and mental shape of his life. So today, Sunny runs a successful e-commerce business that he's created, and he also created something called the Bushido Code, which is a catalog of all the tools and strategies which helped him climb out of depression and reach his full potential. So I wanted to bring him on the show today, basically to talk about how he went from rock bottom to where he is today, how specifically he set up his e-commerce business, and to also talk about the Bushido Code. So, Sunny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Of course. So, I thought a good place to start would be, so you have what you thought was your dream job at Electronic Arts. So, why was that your dream job? Why was that something you wanted to work towards? And why did you actually end up leaving that job?
Yeah, so I mean, as a kid, I was into video games, right? Like every kid, like I was just into having fun, and who wouldn't want to work at a video game place, right? Because the vision you get is that you're making video games, you're playing video games, and so that just seemed like the ideal place for me to be. I was also a creative, right? Like I was always kind of hands-on. I was always drawing, painting. When I got my first computer, I stopped with all of that. I stopped drawing, I stopped painting, and everything was within Photoshop, and so I just became kind of a designer, like a kind of an amateur designer, right? I would create stuff for people, and the natural progression there was to be a designer for a cool company. And one of the coolest companies in my home, where I live right now, Vancouver, was Electronic Arts, right? EA Sports, and they were constantly voted the #1 place to work. And I remember one of the very first video games that I ever had was Need for Speed, and it was on my old computer. And it was one of the first video games I bought for that computer. And then fast forward, like what, 10, 15 years later, and I was working at Electronic Arts, and there was a poster on my wall, and it was of that exact Need for Speed game that I had, Need for Speed 2 Special Edition, I think it was. And it was really strange that I'd made that connection, and I actually had made it to what I thought was going to be my dream job, right? And it was awesome. Like the first couple of years that I had there were sweet. I had a degree in design and marketing, and they were looking for a designer, and I knew someone that worked there. I had a friend named Richard that was working there, and he's like, "Hey, EA is looking for another designer," and I applied, and I got the job. It was only a 6-month or 6-week contract, actually. But we worked together really, really well, and so they took me on full time, and it was fun, man. Like the center that we had, it was called EAC, EA Canada, and it was a huge complex. I think there was about 2,000 people that worked there, and it had basketball courts, it had a full pitch soccer field, it had outdoor beach volleyball, yoga classes that you can go to, midday if you wanted to, whenever you really wanted to, a gym, awesome cafeteria. It really had everything, all the luxuries, theaters and everything in there, and I was in heaven, right? I could pretty much go to work whenever I wanted and leave work whenever I wanted, within reason, as long as I got my stuff done each week. And it was cool, man. I really, really enjoyed that. And then, I don't know, it was like maybe a year and a half, I started not enjoying it as much. It was easy. My job was easy. As a designer, and having especially started since I was really, really young, I was good at Photoshop. I was good at putting images together. I was also a procrastinator growing up in school, right? Like I would always leave projects to the last minute. And but I became kind of good at it. I became good at putting things together last minute and making them look good. And so I started doing that. I started like not my love for the art, the craft of design wasn't as I was starting to lose some of my passion for it. And I was starting to put things together last minute, and I was like, why am I doing this? And I couldn't really put my finger on it. But then I thought about it, and essentially, I was working for this huge company, EA, right? Is a massive global company. I think the biggest brand in video games, right? And it was becoming more of a how many games can we sell kind of thing, right? Like how many clicks have we got on the website? How can we make the conversions higher? And the creative pursuit from it was kind of, oh, I wouldn't say it was being lost, but it was kind of being trumped by the marketing and the dollar spend. And there's another thing that happens in huge companies, and that is that your influence isn't as big as it would be in a small company, which makes sense, right? Like, obviously, I'm not going to be able to revolutionize or come up with a new video game idea, most likely, right? As just a designer at this 2,000 people campus, right? And there's multiple campuses all over the world. So what is my say on this? So I always compare big companies to oil tankers, right? When you have an oil tanker in the water and you want to do something or like change direction, like you really have to commit to that, and the oil tanker takes forever to turn, and you don't really get to feel the water underneath you because it's such a big ship, so you don't really get to feel the bumps and all that. And in contrast, when you work at a smaller company, like let's say a startup or even just a small group of companies, kind of like you're in a speedboat, right? Where you can really influence the boat, right? You make one quick change and the boat's going to turn. You feel all the bumps, and you feel like the wind in your hair, and it's really quite a contrasting experience. And I had that before in the companies that I had worked in before Electronic Arts, and I was kind of missing that at this big company. And also, like, I just wasn't too happy, right? Like there was other things outside of my life that I wasn't happy with. My fitness level wasn't very good. I was kind of probably in the worst shape of my life at that point. My relationship was falling apart. My mom was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and that was really harsh news to deal with. And so I just wasn't happy, even though I had this sweet gig. And so I kind of started to learn. Basically what I started to do was kind of take charge of my life again. And one of the ways that I did this was starting with my health, right? My physical well-being. And I've always had kind of an affinity and a love for working out, and more specifically, martial arts. And so martial arts has been something that's been a part of my life for a long time, since I was really small. I grew up in Scotland. My mom and dad put me in karate when I was really probably maybe like 6 years old. And they put me in martial arts because I was an Indian guy in Scotland. And there was a lot of bullying and just a lot of like racism and stuff, right? We lived in a small town, and I think we were the only Indian family in that town. So naturally, they're like, okay, learn to kind of defend yourself, right? And I took a liking to martial arts. And then when we moved over here in Canada just a few years later, the bullying didn't stop because I was now an Indian guy living in Canada with a Scottish accent, right? And so that didn't help my cause either, right? So the bullying didn't stop. So then they put me into Taekwondo here. And Taekwondo was really cool. I was in that for about 7 years and really loved it. And I learned a lot of things from that training. I learned about mentors, right? My first mentor was my martial arts instructor. I learned about kind of mental strength, right? When you're competing against someone, that you have to have mental strength, that you need to be able to visualize, right, what it is that you want to do. And so all these things were kind of somewhat familiar to me. But working in a cushy job where, you know, you're sitting on these awesome $1,500 chairs, and that's no joke. Like, we had the best chairs. We had everything was the best. Life was easy, right? I didn't really have to worry about my diet. I had a girlfriend, right? Like, so I didn't have to look good to get a girl, right? I didn't have to, do any kind of hard labor, right? So wasn't exercising or anything like that. Everything was behind a big cushy computer. And so naturally, when we stop taking care of our physical body, a lot of things start to fall apart, right? Our mental health, our energy levels, focus, everything goes down. And so my first change that I made was just going back to the gym, taking up martial arts again. And I took
Was
up,
this while you were still at EA, or had you left at this point?
let me think. This was in
Because it sounds like you had this really comfortable, cushy job, and it's almost like the difference between like a zoo animal and a wild animal. Like the zoo animal has all the creature comforts and gets fed every day, and on the outside it looks like a great life, but you can sort of tell that the animals want to, like, they crave that freedom of like being out in the
yeah,
wild, feeling the bumps of the waves, as you said,
yes,
and you kind of, if you're comfortable in one area, that often translates into a lot of other areas, which it sounds like it did for you as well, with your
yeah,
health, with your fitness, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
I can see how that would start to put a bit of a drain on you a bit.
Yeah, and especially as a creative, right?
Mm.
When you're a creative person, you have creative ideas, and when you work at a big company, sometimes not all of those, I would say a very small amount of those ideas get the green light, right?
Mm.
Because there's so many layers in it, and so that's a really weird environment for a creative to be in. Here's an idea. Here's
Mm.
an idea. They're all getting shut down, right?
Mm.
And even the ideas that do get passed might not be your favorite. And so you're like, oh man, but I got this bucket of ideas here that I can't do anything with. So it's like you said, it's kind of like being in a zoo, right? So I wasn't able to execute on these ideas, and so that was another reason why I was like, man, I don't want to work here anymore. I loved it
Mm.
and it was cool, but I feel like I can do more. I have this background in design and marketing. That's what I've got my degree in. And I can influence people to buy video games. Sure, I can do that. I can influence people, you can use that power for good or bad. I can influence people to buy, cigarettes if I really wanted to, right? If I worked for that type of company. Or I can influence people to, like, read or exercise or, eat right or explore their true potential or whatever it was. And I was like, that sounds cool, right? Because I like this personal development stuff. And I've
Mm.
always been into it because of martial arts, right? They teach you
Mm.
about discipline, right? That's one of the first things that you kind of learn in respect, discipline, honor. And that stuff is not in our regular classroom curriculum, right? It's just,
Yeah.
where is, like, discipline, honor, respect, all that stuff? It's just omit, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I know some of this stuff that other people don't know that have been to the regular system. And what if I can just kind of catalog some of this stuff and some other stuff? So I started doing that. So I
So
actually,
did
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
Uh,
So what actually happened? So did you just quit your job? Like, did you have some other project lined up or any other work, or what was the, I guess, that point where you decided to quit and moving forward after that?
yeah, good question. So this is what I did. I was kind of miserable at EA, and I was like, I need to make a change. So what I did was, instead of just quitting my job altogether, I was like, you know what? I've got this idea for this book. I had this idea for the Bushido Code back then, right? Bushido Code basically, it means way of the warrior, right? And it's the Bushido Code is the code of the samurai. And because I was into martial arts and stuff, that name just resonated with me. And so I went traveling for 1 month, left my job, didn't leave my job. I went on vacation from my job, and I still had my job when I came back. And when I went out there, I was like, I'm going to write this book that's kind of inside my head. And I went to 6 different countries in Europe, and which was too many to do in 1 month. And so I wasn't as productive as I could be because, you spend time traveling and, you spend time actually want to check out the places that you're in. But I wrote the skeleton for the Bushido Code. And I had a really amazing 1 month. I traveled by myself, which I think everyone should do at least once.
Great.
More than once. Everyone should just travel, on the regular by themselves because it's really, really cool. Things happen that don't happen when you're traveling with groups. And like in your internally and externally, right?
Yeah.
So I had this framework, and then when I came back from my job, what had happened is because I had been gone for a month, my department had actually moved from me being in this really prime spot in the building with my own kind of cubicle with one of my best friends at the company to I got moved up a floor, and now my hallway was my desk was kind of a cubicle, kind of like in a hallway, kind of. And I remember getting there the first day. So basically, I wanted to maximize my travel time. So what I did this, and I would never recommend anyone do this. I flew back from Paris to Vancouver, and I landed here I think at 7 a.m. And then by kind of 8 a.m. I was at work that day. And but I wanted to maximize my trip. It was brutal. It was brutal. So I was jet lagged, and I went straight from paradise straight back into work. And what I saw was that my office had been moved, and not only that, but all my stuff was in a cardboard box, like a bunch of cardboard boxes. And because I wasn't there, I guess this is my understanding probably, because I wasn't there to be like, oh, where do you want to sit, or where am I going to sit? I think I just got one of the worst spots, right? Like I got like nobody cared, so I'm like, put Sunny there, right? And so there I am, I'm looking at my new desk in contrast to my old one. And all my stuff's in the cardboard box. And I'm like, I thought to myself, I have to leave this place. Like, I can't stay here. This is draining me of my energy, right? Creativity. It's draining me of everything. And I told myself I'm going to give myself 6 months, right? I thought that would be a good period of time. But then fast forward like 3 months and I quit. And I was like, I can't handle this. I just didn't like it. I couldn't even last it. I tried. And I couldn't even last it, so I quit. And yeah, I didn't have a plan. My kind of rough sketch was this Bushido Code thing, right? Was going to be to write this book / program, because that's what it is. It's the ebook / personal development program with a bunch of steps, and then promote that.
Yeah,
that was my plan.
That was your rough plan.
That was my rough plan.
Well, tell me a bit about that period, because before we, I guess, get into the Bushido Code and sort of details of that and how it helped you, I understand you went through a bit of a dark period. Like you tried to start a few businesses, you ended up getting quite a lot of debt, and sort of everything just seemed to fall apart and go wrong.
Yeah.
So can you talk a bit about that period of your life? Like, what was that like? What happened exactly? How low did you go?
Yeah, pretty low, dude. Like you said at the start, rock bottom, right? Like what I felt was rock bottom. And so there were like debt, 40,000 in debt. That's like a really paralyzing kind of number, right? How do you dig yourself out of that? That was from expenses. So I wasn't very smart in my strategy. Basically, one of my best friends had moved from Vancouver to San Francisco. And San Francisco, as you might know, is like, a hub for technology. And here I am leaving electronic arts, and I've got, I'm a technology guy, right? I'm a creative. I've always worked with computers, and I was like, you know what? That's where I should go. I should go to San Fran, because that's, there's the kind of the land of opportunity there when it comes to the tech industry, right? Little did I know that it's also like the most expensive city, right, to live in like North America, or one of, right, especially in terms of like real estate and stuff like that. So, and I didn't really have any need to be there, right? Like anything that I was starting was going to be myself. It didn't have to be near Twitter headquarters or, Uber or Airbnb headquarters. It just didn't make sense. I had no intention of working for any of these companies. So I'm living out there beyond my means. And I don't have any income, and I'm trying to start businesses. And to start many businesses, it takes time, energy, and money, right?
Mm.
And so, and then there's just living costs, feeding myself and gym memberships and all that, cell phone bills. And you know, before I knew it, I was like, oh, I don't have, I'm kind of running into the red quite deeply here, and I don't really have any plan to get out of it. So after just about 4 months, I moved back to Vancouver as kind of a surrender, right? I was like, okay, I can't do it out here.
How did that
Four
feel when you had
months.
that debt? I can imagine that'd be a very heavy burden on your mind.
It is, man. It is, but you cannot focus on it. You can't think about it because it's paralyzing. It really is, right? When you have debt of any kind, it's paralyzing. And when you think about it, I really believe in a lot like these concepts of like law of attraction, right? Like if the more you focus on something, that like it affects your physiology and your energy levels and your positivity, right? And just your mood, your posture. It affects everything, I believe. And if you let that seep into something that you're trying to grow and nurture, it doesn't work, right?
Mm.
So I would look at the numbers once a month when I had to, like pay for rent or whatever, and then I would not look at it again for 29 days, right? And then I would look at it for one day again, and I would not look at it again. So just doing the bare minimum that I could do, right? Pay off however I could,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked, right? It worked in the sense that I made a decision not to focus on that number except for one day in a month, right? When I had to. And even then it was boom, done. Like I paid off the minimum, whatever it was, boom, done. So in that process though, that like I told you earlier, I used to procrastinate a lot, and I still do. I'm a heavy procrastinator, and that works for me and against me. Often, a lot of my greatest work kind of comes in when I'm under pressure. Um, so under that pressure, I started a couple of different companies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the first one I started was called Dollar Head Club, and basically I was working off of this trend at the time, which was Dollar Shave Club and Dollar Beard Club and all these dollar clubs. And I was like, I had an electric toothbrush, right? And electric toothbrush heads at the time were super expensive. Like even if I go into the store right now to get a replacement head, like a brawn replacement head, they come in 3 packs. They're like $30. That's like $10 a head, right? And they last. They don't last that long, right? They only last a couple of months or whatever. And I was like, man, that's expensive. So I went on Amazon and I was able to find these similar heads, not the same ones, but for way cheaper. To the point where they were like $1 a head, right? So like 10
Mm-hmm.
times less. Then I went on AliExpress, which is the Chinese kind of supplier kind of website, right? And they were like 15 cents a head there. And I was like, everyone needs toothbrush heads if they have an electric toothbrush. It's not like you're one day going to stop using your electric toothbrush and go back to a standard one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, what if I do the Dollar Shave Club model with these toothbrush heads? So I did it, and I started this company called Dollar Head Club, and I made the website. And keep in mind that my background's in design and marketing, so sometimes I spent too much time on the look and feel of the thing, right? Uh, it,
It's a good form of
and
procrastination.
yeah, 100% perfectionism, right, at its finest. Um, but one of the huge lessons that I've learned from that is that just put an idea out and see if it gets traction. If it does, then put makeup on it and
Mm.
make it prettier, right? But first, let's see if you got an idea. So
Mm.
it does take time to start a company. So that there was a month gone there, and it didn't work that great. Like it was very hard to target people that
Mm.
had toothbrushes, that had electric toothbrushes, and
What
even
why
then,
didn't it work? 'Cause that
well,
was
that was
kind
one
of like a
reason.
trend.
Yeah, that was
That
one reason, was that it's
one
hard to
customer.
target people, right? Like, how do I really know if you use a Sonicare toothbrush or a Philips electric toothbrush head? With Facebook targeting, I can kind of do some stuff, but like I can see if you like the Philips or Sonicare brands. But beyond that, how do I target you, right?
Mm.
Most people probably don't use electric toothbrushes, right? They use regular toothbrushes still, even though that's probably changing. Um,
Yeah.
but at least back then, it was hard for me to target. Another thing was profit margins weren't that good, right? They were okay, right? Because in my head, I'm thinking They're selling them for $30, right, for 3 heads. I can get them for 15 cents a head. So, right, for 50 cents, that 30-cent package, that $30 package is only really worth 50 cents. So think about how much their margins, right? I mean, that's really their cash cow. That's why the toothbrushes are so cheap now, right? Because they're making all their money on the toothbrush head. Same with like Keurig, right? Like the Keurig coffee machines. They're pretty
Yeah.
much giving those away for free because now you have to stick with their pods.
Yeah.
Cool business idea, but so I'm thinking about that. But then I'm like, okay, if I am actually doing a delivery service, how long do these toothbrush heads last? Well, turns out they kind of last for a while. They last a quarter of it. They last 3 months if you, right? That's what they say. They say you're supposed to replace them every 3 months. So that
Yeah.
means that I can sell one toothbrush head every 3 months. But let's say that's a year. I can sell four every year. And how much am I? If they're selling them for 30, I gotta reduce my price by quite a bit because mine aren't Philips brand. They're kind of a no-name brand, and the numbers weren't working, right? And let's say I don't know. There's the cost of acquisition for the customer, right? Let's say it costs me $10 to get you as a customer through advertising or whatever. Well, I need to make more than $10 to get my money back, right? But if I'm only making $8 or whatever on you, and let's say you never buy again, well, I've lost $2 on that customer, right? So that was a huge learning. And I was like, man, I didn't think this through. I put all this love, energy, time, effort into the design and the marketing and the look and the feel, but I never crunched the numbers and I never pulled the public, and so I've wasted my time. So there's one company, right?
Did you buy
Um,
stock or were you drop shipping
no,
them?
drop shipping, right?
Okay.
Drop shipping. Um, and that was the idea, was to start drop shipping. And then when I know this company works, then buy a bunch because I get them even cheaper than the prices that I've given you, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one company that didn't work. Then I started with another company that was selling Indian jewelry. And these are weird projects, right? Like, I'm not passionate about toothbrushes. I'm definitely not passionate about Indian jewelry, but these were just things that I thought I saw a market need for, right? Um, Indian weddings are some of the most elaborate, most expensive weddings probably ever, right? Like, I don't know very many that kind of, they're usually a week-long event, and there's like, like 5 days of dressing up, especially for women, right? They're different suits and different jewelry and stuff like that. So I thought about it and I looked at the profit margins. I was like, there's an opportunity. There's profit margins. I kind of know the industry a little bit because I'm Indian, but not really, right? What do I know about jewelry? And so I started this store. I found a supplier in India this time, not China. I made
Makes
up a
sense.
website. Yeah. Yeah. And though I hope it wasn't in China, and I'll tell you why in a second. Um, so I start this website, and again, on the Shopify platform, I already know what I'm doing now with Shopify. I did the store on there, and this was a little bit quicker, right? I found some cool pictures, put them up, and I started selling. Stuff actually started moving, and I was like, sweet, this is working. And until it actually came to deliver items to the customers, dealing with the people that I was dealing with in India was horrible, man. It was so bad. Like, there was shipping problems, there was communication problems, there was quality problems, and my supplier just wasn't good. So I literally just couldn't continue. I tried getting stuff from China, but I couldn't. I couldn't find the same kind of types of jewelry in China. China has some kind of um, advantage in industry when it comes to e-commerce. Their shipping is subsidized in some way or another, I believe. That's why you can often order stuff from China and get free shipping,
Mm.
right? And so I had to not only pay for the products in India, but also the shipping, sometimes insurance, and the delivery times weren't right, and just communication wasn't very good. And so I tried to find the same thing in China, and I just couldn't. So even though I had customers, I didn't have a good quality source for products. So there was another idea that went, and I was like, okay, let's try this again, right? Let's try something else. So I
Yeah.
started another store, and this time I got my brother involved. And my brother had a background in accounting, and he also wanted to get away from the kind of 9 to 5 grind. And so we started a store together. And again, we were like, where's the opportunity? Where's the margins? And we're like, okay, well, women are the biggest buyers on the internet, right? And so we started a store. It was called Louvre. It's a fake French word. I think it's a fake French word. And so we started selling women's beauty products, something we knew nothing about. And again, invested like a month or more into that store, and it was doing okay, like break even, maybe just a little bit more than that. But it's not something that we were passionate about. We didn't know anything about the audience. We didn't know anything about the products. And there's another failed store, right? So I'm at my third failed store, and I've had failed businesses to my name before that too, right? Like that I haven't even touched upon, because I always knew I wanted to get into entrepreneurship, but I never had a mentor or anything like that in business. And that was, that's a huge learning. You want to get into anything in life, find a mentor. That's the shortcut, right?
100%.
And yeah, so now there's something going on pretty much during this whole time. I had a friend of mine, one of my best friends, who was actually killing it in e-commerce. That's why I was trying e-commerce again and again and again. And I had this marketing and design background. So why wasn't this e-commerce thing working for me, right? It was working for him. And so I went, okay, you know what? This time we're going to start a store. And the strategy is going to be very different than the other strategy. It's not going to be a toothbrush store. It's not going to be a women's beauty store. And it's not going to be, what was the third one? The second one?
Jewelry.
Jewelry store. It's not yet.
Jewelry.
Exactly. It's not going to be that, right? What it's going to be instead is just a store. It's not going to have a niche. It's going to have a general name. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this kind of as a sandbox to try to promote products. And I want to be able to sell anything on this store. So as long as I keep it abstract in name, I can sell plush toys. I can sell, hunting clothing, camouflage gear. I can sell, beach lawn chairs or whatever. Right? I can sell whatever I want. And so I started that store, and we started kind of trying any and every product. We launched hundreds of products, and it was sweet because we started selling stuff, right? And this was through dropshipping. And
can you, if we can just pause there for a second,
yeah,
just for the people listening, can you just quickly define what a dropshipping business model is?
of course, man. So because I was low on funds at the time, I wasn't able to buy inventory and sell it, right? That's a decent model, but there's a lot of headache there too, right? One is you have to have the initial investment. Two, you have to ship it all over, and shipping a ton of stuff takes a while because you have to usually ship it by boat, or it's very expensive if you ship it by flight. But shipping small stuff is, it's free in most cases. Now, drop shipping, basically what it is that I have my supplier in China who has a catalog of products, and then I sell them on my website. And when I get a sale, I tell my supplier, hey, can you ship this to my customer here? And they do. So I don't have any inventory. I don't have any initial upfront cost. And it works because, if I had to buy inventory for all these products, hundreds of products, and most of them didn't work, right? The average that worked for us is 1 in 10, which is a crazy number to think about, right? Only 10% of the products we launched ever worked. And because it's trial and error, right? You're trying to find a product that works for an audience and a price point that's not too competitive. And so like the stars really kind of have to align, right? And so we had this supplier that was then shipping stuff directly to our customers. The only downside with drop shipping is that there is a delay from when the customer orders and when they get it, right? That's probably the biggest downfall of drop shipping.
Because it's coming from China rather than
all the way from China. Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to, unless you order the product yourself, like kind of verify the quality of the product, right? Sure, the picture's online. The supplier might be like, yeah, this thing's, a dream. It works great. But when some of our customers get it, they might not feel the same, right? So those are kind of the two downsides. But that's the drop shipping model in a nutshell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Now we had all these products we were testing, and then we were able to take our general store and kind of categorize it. You know, camping stuff, hunting stuff, and you know, outdoor stuff. We were still testing like the women's niches, right? Like beauty products and stuff. And we would kind of the floor now, the store now could be flexible, right? And that's really important. To in this type of situation, right, where we don't really know what's going to work. But then we built a strong and substantial following around a few key products, and most of them were outdoor or hunting related. Yeah, I shouldn't say hunting, just more outdoor related. A lot of camouflage stuff, a lot of like waterproof pants, a lot of you know, stuff like that, tents, etc.
It reminds me almost of are you familiar with a business called Wiggle? They're sort of like the largest online seller of bicycle parts, really.
Oh, okay.
And they actually started in a similar way. That's why they started with the name Wiggle, because it had nothing to do with anything. So they could test different products and see what worked. And they just happened to find that selling cycling products online was a good niche. And then they sort of doubled down on that once it started working. So it sounds like
That's brilliant.
a similar sort of approach.
That's great, man. I think that strategy, I love the name, Wiggle. It also kind of is like, where are we going? We don't really know, right? I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that strategy works for us. And it continues to work for us to this point. Now this store has been running for a few years, and it still has its ups and downs, right? Facebook advertising has its ups and downs. We're trying to venture out into other forms of advertising. But more importantly than anything, and my brother and I, we both agree to this, is the learning that we got from this. Like e-commerce, selling things online is the future. There's like no question about that, right? And how you can market or sell, like we can replace that sell with anything, right? Like convincing people online to do X is a huge skill, right? If I can convince you to download my free PDF, that's sweet, because now I've got your email and I can, you know, inform you about what it is that I do and share some cool tools with you. And now we build a rapport. And then maybe one day when I do have something to sell or promote or whatever, then because I've been giving you all this advice and stuff, you might actually pull the trigger on it. But just having that skill set, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful things that you can actually do in modern day. And that's why I became a designer. I thought about what I wanted to do in life, and design is essentially design in the sense of marketing, right? There's art, which you're creating still, but art is kind of abstract, right? There's no, other than absorbing what it is that the artist has created, I don't often have to take an action on what they've done. But design, the purpose of design is for me, the viewer or user or reader or whatever, is to take action, to buy this or download this or give you my email, or have a certain opinion about a certain thing. And I think that's a really, really powerful skill set, and one that is going to serve you if you learn it for your whole life.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And as you said, especially moving forward for the next foreseeable future until something comes along that trumps the internet, I guess, and buy online, it's going to be an extremely valuable skill. So couldn't agree more with that.
Even if there is something that trumps the internet, let's just say, right, there's still this art of communication, right? That 100%. Is like communicating your idea, communicating the benefits of why A is better than B, right? All of that, right? The trust in a brand, like all that stuff is just like lifelong skills.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And that's actually why I took a job did door-to-door sales for a period in my life, because that's exactly, like, people might look at that and say, what are you doing? That's not really worth your time or whatever. But learning how to walk into someone's business, interrupt their day, get them to sit down and actually buy something from you on the spot is a pretty valuable skill to have.
Oh man, so that's probably one of the hardest ways to do it, right? Because you're invading their time, their space, and you're pretty much cold. It's like cold calling, but even more worse than that, right? Because you actually have to go places, and there's no warm lead. Like that's a huge skill right there.
Absolutely. And I
And
can say,
sorry,
go
so you
ahead.
can say what?
I was just going to say that I've taken all the stuff I learned. I only did it for like 4 or 5 months or something, but
Yeah,
the skills I learned from that have helped me so much. Even just something like reaching out to people like yourself to come on the podcast, come on for an interview. Like that's hard for some people to be able to reach out and sort of ask people to
yeah,
give their time and set up this sort of call. But because I've sort of developed those skills, it's a lot easier for me, which is helped me in a lot of ways, as you can imagine.
yeah, dude. Like sales, like once you learn the broad stroke of sales, selling something. I used to sell. I've done a good amount of selling, a lot of commission electronic sales. I used to work at a camera store. Um, Also used to work in a general like cell phone store, and these are all kind of commission sales kind of. So you actually have to learn and how people buy and why they don't buy, right?
Mm,
And just knowing some of the psychology about that, like it's huge. It's really again a lifelong skill that I didn't know I was learning a lifelong skill when I was working at a cell phone store, but like legit.
yeah. What's one or two things you learned from working there? Can you think of anything specific in terms of
Um,
sales or
Yeah, man. Like I
persuasion?
remember tricks. There used to be tricks. I learned so many tricks from the guys like that. Like the
Yeah.
more kind of veterans. Like, you know, people would come in looking for certain cameras and stuff like that. And you never like. Let's say, for instance, um, this is going to bring up like some of these like are kind of sleazy salespeople tactics in some way, right? But at the same time, it's the way it works. Like even if
Yeah.
you have two cameras, the customer's more interested. They're interested in both. Like even just putting the one camera a little bit more in front, and if both cameras have the same feature set, right? But one has, you would point at the camera, that has that you want them to buy when you're telling them the feature set, right? Both cameras have, but you're only pointing at this, right? And so the little things like that, like the
Yeah.
psychology of it, right? It's really strange how that stuff works.
Hmm.
What are some other things that I learned from it?
While you're thinking of that,
Yeah,
one example from my days,
yeah,
there's um, you do what was called a trial close. So they could either use for the thing I was selling, they could either use an iPad or like a sort of FPOS machine type thing. And so you're
okay,
sort of going through how that all works, and then towards the end, you just ask the question like, which one's going to suit you better, the iPad or the FPOS machine?
yeah,
Because then, if they say if they choose one, you're sort of presenting a question to test like how ready they are
yeah.
to buy. And if they say yeah the iPad, then you can close and get the deal.
They're ready.
But
Yeah, they're ready to close.
if they're like oh I'm not sure yet, then you sort of have to take a step back and build up that value. So yeah, that
Oh, it's
was
so clever.
one thing.
It's so clever. Another thing that I learned that is not as sleazy. That first one is kind of sleazy, right? But another one that's not as sleazy is literally like legit caring about the customer, right? And going in for, especially with camera stuff, right? Like when I was selling camera stuff, it was really important for me to understand what the customer wanted and get them set up with the right thing. Because if they took that camera away and they were really happy with it and they were happy with my service, well, they're very likely to come back to me, ask me for me by name when they're buying that $700 lens, right?
Mm.
And so, like, if you actually care, that I've read this in so many times in recently. The best marketing strategy is caring, and that couldn't be more true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, totally agree.
James. Quick note. I set up the table right here because it was sunny a while back, and now it's getting dark. It looks like I'm getting really dark on the screen. Is that going to be an issue? Do you want me to move, or do you think we're good like this?
Uh that's totally fine. I think yeah, we're still good. I can still
Good.
see
Okay.
you.
Cool, man.
Cool. Um, Perfect. Well, so going back to I guess where we were with your dropshipping business. So is it just you and your brother, or have you got employees for this, or how's
Yeah.
that all set up?
Yeah, man. So my brother is had no computer like experience before this, pretty much, and he really became kind of obsessed with Facebook advertising,
Mm,
and that was the one thing that I hadn't really studied too much of. Sure, I had launched my own campaigns when it came to my other stores, But it wasn't something I kind of obsessed over. My obsession has always been kind of creative, right?
Mm.
And not so much analytical. And Facebook is more analytical, right? It has creative element to it, obviously, but it is more analytic. And sorry, I just have my screen's doing something funny here. Just want to
Oh, yeah,
fix.
right.
So it was
So
me
you
and
sort
him.
of had complementing skill
We had
sets, I
we had
guess. It
we had
was
complementing skill sets, exactly.
he was the
And
analytical ad guy with the creative,
yeah,
sort of bring them together.
yeah. And also, when you're working just by yourself, just a one-man show, even though you set a deadline, if you don't make it, no one's gonna say anything,
Yeah.
right? And when you're kind of a procrastinator like me, that's a good thing to have. That like
Mm.
that second person in the business is kind of cracking the whip and be like, "Hey, you said this would be done by Friday. Like, what's going on?" Right?
Yeah.
And so that's a huge part of starting a business
Mm.
is the self discipline, right? It's
Mm.
the personal development that happens from a business. If you
Yes.
don't have control of your time or your energy levels, your focus, good luck starting a business,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
so that was a really huge asset working with my brother. Also, just brought us closer too, right? As siblings, right? We're very different people, and so
Mhm.
having this commonality, this baby that we're nurturing, which is our business, gave us more reason to talk and collaborate and expand on ideas and blah blah blah. And there was a lot of like headbutting going on because we are so different and passionate in our own way.
Mhm.
But it definitely brought me and my brother closer together.
It's
So
awesome.
yeah, um, one of the things that I had learned a few years prior from reading um, Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, was the process of outsourcing. And this is always something that I wanted to explore. And now that our store was doing fairly good, we were getting 30, 40 sales a day, which meant we had to talk to our supplier 30, 40 times, right? And be like, hey, we've got this order, we've got that order, we've got that order. And now I had to kind of come up with a process to simplify that.
Mm.
And so I love design. And it's because I love designing and I like designing processes that make things simple, right? And so um, using kind of some things that I learned in design, I started creating processes. And that's how we found our first employee who we hired through Upwork, who has been the best guy I've hired to date out of any project that I've ever hired. He's been with us pretty much since day one. And he's kind of the manager of the store now, right? Of our customer service team, of our fulfillment team. And whenever we need something, we'll talk to him. I still do a lot of the design. I tried outsourcing design, and it's been hit or miss, right? Like there's that saying that if you want something done right, do it yourself. I guess that's the kind of the perfectionism element in me.
Mhm.
But I found that when I was outsourcing that, I would often have to make tweaks anyways. So I just started doing it myself. And
Mhm.
I just haven't been able to nail that because I'm also looking at someone that is reasonably priced too, right? Because
Yeah.
the designers are often quite expensive, the good ones. So I just wasn't able to get it. So I was like, you know what? It's okay. If I spend X amount of hours, 3 hours creating a product launch, a page, that's okay. I'm okay with that. So I budgeted that into my schedule, right? 3 hours a day working on design. Um, but yeah, so we grew our team. We started hiring other people, and they weren't as good. Our customer service wasn't as good as our first guy. So we asked our main guy, Christian. I was like, "Do you know anyone else?" He's from the Philippines. That's in your family or something that you wouldn't mind hiring to bring on board. And he brought along two people that he knew from his family, and now we've kind of got like a double family business, like me and my brother, and then we got this family in the Philippines that is taking care of our customer service, our fulfillment, and stuff like that. So it worked out really well.
Mm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the business has grown a lot. I was curious, what, well, first of all, with this dropshipping business, Do you think that's something that anyone can set up? Let's say if I wanted to start this dropshipping business on the side and build something up, do you think it's something that anyone can do? And I guess what did you do different to most people? Because you hear a lot of stories of people who try to set up these dropshipping businesses, and obviously you tried to in the past as well yourself. Is it
Yeah,
just a case
yeah,
of trial and error, or do you think anyone can do it?
yeah,
How did
dude.
you actually learn?
Well, okay. So you asked a couple questions there. One was how to start. How like can everyone do it? Right? Is that the main question?
Yeah, can anyone do it? And then I guess how did you learn?
Okay.
How did you learn?
I wouldn't say that everyone can do it. If you are comfortable behind the computer and you don't mind spending hours behind the computer to learn how it's done, then you can probably do it, right? But if technology is not your thing, right? If you kind of get intimidated by technology, then I wouldn't recommend that unless you have unless you have the time and passion to really learn it. You cannot outsource the learning. Let's just put it that way, right? You have to do the learning yourself. And so oftentimes I do a lot of consultation with clients now too, right? Starting their own e-commerce stores and their brands. And one of the biggest warning signs is when someone's like, yeah, I was going to outsource this and outsource that and outsource that. I was like, well, have you started any of it? No, I haven't started any of it. So you're spending thousands of dollars in outsourcing all this stuff, but you haven't spent the time and energy into really getting to know your audience or whatever. Like you have to have some level of passion in it. I would recommend it, right? I started with, the stories that I told you of the stores that I started, they all failed, right? A lot of people would have failed at the toothbrush, like if the toothbrush store failed, been like, okay, oh, do you hear that? It's a motorcycle or something outside. They would have stopped at that first try, right? Maybe they would have stopped in the second try. Maybe they would have stopped at the third try, right? I went with e-commerce four tries in before I actually got a success, right? And I'm not talking about the other businesses I had even before EA and stuff like that that were not fruitful, right? So you have to have a resilient attitude, right? Now, with that said, it's a really accessible business, right? Because you don't have to have too much to start. You don't have to have any real funds to start it, right? Other than maybe some advertising and some design stuff. If you have a niche or an idea that is different, unique, and it's not being done out there, then yeah, give it a shot, right? But be ready for investing a lot of time into learning and be resilient about it. Don't give up the first time.
Yeah, that's good advice. And do you think that resilience, that consistency of just being willing to try again, keep trying, is that the main differentiator, do you think, between, I guess there's a few things really. You've got your marketing and design background, which would have really helped.
Yeah.
You've got your resilience and your persistence, even when you fail 3, 4, 5 times.
Yeah.
That's probably those are probably good differentiators that you had that I guess allowed you to eventually succeed with this one. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And the desperation. I just quit this job, right?
Yeah.
I just quit this awesome job. And I don't know, I probably could have got my job back if I really wanted it, right? If I talked to them. But I did not want to do that. And I didn't want to be a total failure, right? I already kind of had my tail between my legs when I moved back to Vancouver from San Francisco. I didn't want to have to wave the white flag completely, right?
Yep.
So I had my back against the wall, and I had to, and that, when you have your back against the wall is often when people show the most amount of grit, right? And that's what happened with me. And yeah, man, I do think that resilience is one of the main things. If not, like, even if you try a business and you have a successful business, the first shot, I almost guarantee that within your first year, you're going to have some crazy ups and downs. So you're going to have to be resilient there, right? And then, you might have your business getting super successful, and you've got this huge problem that happens. That's probably going to happen at least once or twice, right? Where you've got all these products, but they spelled your brand wrong or something. What do you do then? You have to be resilient then too, right? or whatever the problem is. There's always going to be a problem. So there definitely is a level of resilience. And this is kind of where the Bushido Code kind of fits in too, right? The Bushido Code, which is the code of the samurai, embraces like hardship, right? Martial arts as a whole embraces hardship. If you know anyone that does any kind of like wrestling or jiu-jitsu, if they're in an environment where there's constant pressure and grinding out for 5 minutes or more, right, against another athlete, those people are some of the most resilient people that I know, right? And so, yeah, resilience is a huge ingredient in the recipe for success.
Well, let's talk about the Bushido Code in a second, but just, I guess, to put a bow on this, on the business side of things with your current business, if you were doing it again, would you keep your job at EA and work on this on the side and build it up before quitting? Or did you kind of need that motivation of having your back against the wall to actually make it work?
Yeah, man. So that's a great question. As I've said multiple times, by nature, I tend to be kind of a procrastinator. And it's more because I think things through a lot in my head, right? I'm a designer, so I'm always like, what if it went this way? What if it went that way? Okay, well, I've got a logo, but what if I actually make it better like this or do this, right? Or what if, wait a second, what if about this audience instead of that audience? So I'm in my head. It's like, what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis or whatever, right? So for me, leaving my job was almost like, okay, I've got a clean slate. I've got 24 hours where I can work on myself, right? And that's a beautiful thing, right? When you have a whole day. But if I think back, and if I, hindsight is always 20/20, right? That's the saying. Like, if I had the skills I had now, and I had a cushy, easy job, man. My job was not hard. I was never stressed about it. Seldom was I stressed about it. Sometimes it was long hours because when, they give you all this freedom, but you got to get the deadlines done, right? But other than that, it was good. So, and it was a constant, easy paycheck. Yeah, the smart thing would have definitely been to stay there and build up my side business until my side business was making as much, or more money than my 9 to 5, right? That's the smart thing to do. But I didn't think about that. I was like, leave this thing, pour 100% of my energy into my passion, and let's see what happens. Awesome. I was betting on myself,
Yeah, and I think it works. Some people are better off one way. It sounds like you kind of needed a kick in the butt, I guess. You're back against the wall. So.
Yeah, there's two different kinds of personalities that way, right? There's the people who that thrive under pressure, and then there's the people that don't, that prefer, a well-written to-do list, and they're just a little bit more, I guess, organized.
Cool. Well, we mentioned just quickly before about the Bushido Code, so I'm pretty keen to dive into that. So you've already explained it a little bit of what it is exactly, but maybe if you can just go over what is the Bushido Code, why'd you create it, what are you actually hoping to achieve with this project?
Yeah, so the Bushido Code, like I said, I've got this extensive background in martial arts, and it's always been a part of my life. And when I was going through some hardships in my life, I was learning from the hardships. I was learning from when I was actually going out there and getting help, right? Like whether that was through, reading books on how to manage, like the situations that I was in, or getting some level of coaching or therapy, right? Like when I was like super depressed, I even at one point, like I heard a podcast and there was a coach, and he was talking about depression, and so I talked to him, and I was learning things from him. So I needed a way to organize the stuff that I was learning, right? Because we're learning machines, right? Since we've been born, we're just constantly learning stuff, but never before have we had access to as much information as we do now, right? Like I could literally learn, like 2 days ago, I don't know why I was doing it, but I was watching a video on how Parmesan cheese was made, right? Like this is something that has no relevance to me, but it's there, it's accessible, and I was learning how Parmesan cheese was made, and and so I needed a way to catalog the good stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to document how Parmesan cheese is made because it's not very helpful, but if I am at least cataloging what I'm learning, I'm noticing that, hey, sometimes you spend time wasting time. You spend time in a negative way, right? And so I'm learning through that, and you have to have some kind of feedback loop, right? And so I started writing. That was my outlet. I was never good at writing. I was always kind of like a C+ student in English, and until I went to university, and I had this really cool philosophy teacher, and I actually legit loved some of the stuff, and I was getting good marks on my papers from him. And so my writing, instead of becoming so technical, became creative. And creativity is kind of an extension of me. I love being creative. And language became kind of, poetic, and it became a tool for me to make a connection with another human being. And I started jotting down everything I was learning in short, concise, what I called potent posts, right? And like where there'd be one sentence, the gist of it, and then the explanation. And I started posting these on Instagram for myself. And I used the name Bushido Code because of my background in martial arts, right? And the samurai have a code that they follow. And I was like, okay, well, let's call these posts codes, right? And then the whole thing is follow the code, right? And so that's how it was kind of born. And it was born out of a kind of a selfish pursuit. And that served me well, right? It served me well for it to be selfish because because it was for myself, I was putting more effort into it, right? If something's for someone else, often, when you treat it as your own, you're going to put the most amount of love and energy into it, right? When it's for someone else, sometimes that's lost. So this whole project was just for myself, and if other people liked it, then so be it. And started putting it out there, and lo and behold, like it actually started getting some traction, and people were enjoying the content I was putting out there.
That's awesome. And so it was basically, I guess, just a compilation of things you were learning, just concisely put into this code, which you could then use as like a reference manual for things you're going through in your life. You could look, if you needed guidance, if you needed help with the decision, it was almost like a manual you could go to.
Yeah. So really interesting that you mentioned manual. Like when growing up, I often just curious, right? I was always curious. Like I grew up in a Sikh family, and in my house I would have images of our Sikh gurus with their sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed. And as a young boy, I would look at these and I would be like, okay, the guru is sitting there with his eyes closed and his legs crossed. But why is he doing that, right? Like, what's going on there? Oh, he's praying, or he's meditating, or right? But I didn't really know what that was, right? I never really understood it. But I always had a curiosity about it, and so I often thought to myself when I was young, I was like, where's this manual for life, right? Like, where is it? And I would argue that many religions kind of offer the manual for life, right? Like, this is how you should live, and this is not how you should live, and you should be good to others, and blah blah blah. But when it came down to like the nitty gritty, like what time are human beings supposed to wake up, like that type of stuff, right? It's not always, it isn't in some religions, like wake up with the sun, blah blah blah. But there was a lot of details that were missing, or that I had to kind of go and find myself, right? And one of the other ways to maybe learn it would have been to read the scriptures, which are often abstract and poetic and not direct. And as a designer, I wanted to create something that was not very long, that was pretty concise, and it covered the most important things that would kind of affect your life. The 80-20 rule, you're probably familiar with the 80-20 rule, right? Right, 20% of like in business, 20% of your sales or your customers give you 80% of your revenue, right? That type of stuff. And so I was like, what is the 80-20 of life that I can kind of condense into this manual? And I went out to, after creating or after writing all these posts, I was like, okay, what's the best stuff here? What's the stuff that's helped me the most, that's helped other people the most? And how can I create this into a short, succinct kind of book or program where if there's only one thing I share with someone, it's this, and it will be able to help them the most. And that's how the Bushido Code kind of the program started coming around.
That's awesome. And maybe you could give a few specific examples of some of the principles, because I downloaded the Bushido Code for myself and had a look through it, and it's awesome. As you said, it's that 80-20 analysis, like what are the most high impact things you can focus on, and to get the best results, really. And one of the things I liked particularly was the life calendar. So maybe if you could explain either that or some of the other principles.
Oh yeah, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So the life calendar is something that I haven't really seen anyone else do that. So a lot of this stuff in this book has been taken from things that I've read or tried in different programs. Like I say in the book, I went through tons of like courses to improve myself, and all the best stuff I've kind of put into here. But the life calendar was more so for me, right? When I wrote this book, I was probably about 30, 31 years old. And a lot of people around that age are kind of like starting to think about their future and stuff like that. And they start getting kind of paranoid about, am I running behind, right? Should I be here? Should I have this? Should I have a house? Should I have a family? Blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of in that similar space too. But then way back years ago, I think when I was 25, I wrote this timeline on a piece of paper. And I do this every year on my birthday. I go to a coffee shop by myself. Usually I get high. I get high on with some weed, right? Like I smoke a joint, and it puts you in a different spot, man. And I go to a coffee shop by myself, and I have some strong coffee and a blank piece of paper, and I just write down some stuff. And I wrote down a 0 to, and then I was like, okay, what's my lifeline going to be like? And I was like, well, I don't know, 80, right? That seems like a good one. But I was like, what? I know people live more than 80. A lot of people live to be 100 years old. And with technology and stuff, like, we're going to probably be more than that, right? Like, eventually. And so I don't know why, but I wrote down 120, right? Just as kind of a huge, as like, why not, right? Let's test. Let's see if I can live to be 120 years old. If I take care of myself and all that. Like, I've read of people that have lived to be older than that. So, what's that?
Should be possible, definitely.
Yeah, right. So I was like, okay, I'm an optimistic person. So but let's say even if we're being conservative, let's say 0 to 80, right? And at that point, I was 25 out of this 80, and I looked at the whole thing, and I was like, I've only covered a very small portion of this. So even though I'm 25 years old, I'm still kind of in this infancy stage of my life, right? Like the 30s and 40s are kind of, if they're middle age, right? And if you're a healthy 60-year-old, you can do everything you want, right? If your knees and your back is good, like your brain is still strong, especially if you exercise it. And we are learning so much about ourselves and how to prolong our ability as human beings that there should be no reason why I'm not a super functional 60, 70, 80-year-old. I see 80-year-old people all the time that are running marathons and working when they don't have to just because they're passionate about stuff. And so what I did in the life calendar was I basically just get people to shade in how much of their life that they've completed and see how much of their life is kind of remaining, right? If all goes well. And that does something for people. Like, it kind of puts into perspective, like, oh man, I've got tons of time. So, okay, I can take a breath. I can plan this. And also in these 20 or 25 or 30, 35 years or whatever, I've accomplished this, right? I've lived an amazing life. And when you're aware of that, it kind of puts you in new headspace. You're not chasing anymore, right? You're not making up for lost time, because often a lot of us are, right? So that's one kind of tool. I think that's earlier in the book. Was there anything else that worked for you? I know there's some that people have always, come back to me, say, I'm so glad I did this. I can share that. Or is there something else that you want me to elaborate on?
One of the other ones I liked, was the do not do list. I thought that was good.
That's the one I want to talk about.
Yeah.
That is probably one of my favorite things in that book, and it's so simple. So everyone has a to-do list, right? Everyone who's trying to be productive has their to-do list. I got to do these 5 things today, blah blah blah. I got to do these things in the month. I got to do these things in the year. This is my bucket list, right? I got to do these things before I die. And it's just so common, but how many of us actually have a do not do list? Because believe me when I say that most of us are doing things that we even know we shouldn't be doing, and we do them on a regular basis, right? There's a lot of common ones. I work with a lot of men. The Bushido Code has a martial arts spin to it, which tends to be a little bit more masculine. And so I work with a lot of men who struggle with like self-confidence and stuff like that. And one common theme that I've noticed and it's rampant, is watching pornography. Tends to be a huge thing that young men are addicted to, because it's so available, and they might not be socially outgoing, so they kind of have to return to the computer to get their kicks, right? And it's just one of the worst things that we can do, especially in an addiction to pornography, right? It's the 10 seconds of pleasure for like hours of guilt and shame, and it zaps your energy, and you don't feel good about yourself. So that is on a lot of people's do not do list. I think I've got in the book, there's only space for 3 do not do's in the book. That might be one of them, right? Another one that's common is going to sleep with your phone in your bedroom, right? What tends to happen is, you can't go to sleep, so you open up your phone and you scroll on Instagram for 40 minutes before you go to sleep. Or you wake up in the morning, you turn your alarm off on your phone, and you look at your phone again, and you're replying back to emails or looking at Instagram for the first 40 minutes of your day. And there's you've zapped a lot of energy before and after. 40 minutes and 40 minutes, that's a lot of time, right? That you've wasted behind your phone on non-productive work, right? Another thing might be dealing with some of the more common issues that I hear and that work well for a do not do list. Let's say that you just recently got out of a relationship, and so you're constantly looking at your ex-girlfriend's Instagram profile to see who she's dating or what's going on over there, right? That is an energy zapper, right? Like, there's nothing good that's going to come out of that, right? So if that might be 3 things that you put on your do not do list. And if we can go through the day without, in this case, without watching pornography, without looking at our ex-girlfriend's Instagram page, and without what's the second one?
Without looking at the Instagram page, without looking at the phone,
without you
in the
looking at your phone.
bedroom.
Exactly, right? Those, right? They're kind of similar, but if we can go out through our day like that, we all of a sudden have developed a level of willpower. And that willpower carries on through other things in our day, right? It carries on through our commitment to our going to the gym, right? Today, it's like pouring here today. Like, I might not have the drive to go to the gym, but because I've built up this willpower of not doing this and not doing that, not doing that, because I know these things zap my energy, zap my confidence, and make me feel like shit, right? Now I might be more likely to go to the gym, right? So the do not do list is a list I think that everyone should have, because it really is in some ways more valuable than the to-do list.
Couldn't agree more. It's definitely powerful, because it's one of those things. There's a combination of things you should do that are going to help you, and a lot of the stuff in the Bushido Code is that you should do this or like think these ways, but then equally you've got to cut out things as well. So it's about having both. I think definitely helps.
Yeah, man.
A lot. Cool.
Absolutely. You have to make way for the new ones, right? Like one of the
Mm,
analogies I use in the Bushido Code is that in the fall, like when trees, trees, their leaves fall in the fall, right? And we often think that, oh, the leaves just fall. But in reality, what's actually happening is the trees have a mechanism where they actually push the leaf off the tree, so it no longer hangs there. So, and that starts a kind of a chain event of reactions that help the tree sustain itself through the winter and then grow leaves again in the spring. And we need to have that similar mechanism. We need to have a mechanism where we need to let go of things that are no longer serving us.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think, yeah, it's a great little book that you've got there. It's awesome. I can tell from reading it that you've it's come from a lot of painful experiences potentially, and sort of a lot of lessons learned, and sort of a lot of love and energy into putting it all together. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Thanks, man.
It's
Yeah.
if someone wants to buy that, what's the best way to? We'll link it up, but if you just let people know now, like where would be the best place to go and check that out, what it's all about.
Yeah,
See
man.
it.
So the best place to get it would be probably on my Instagram. So there's a link on it on my Instagram. The account is bushido.code. Bushido spelled Bushido,
Mhm.
period Code. And there's a link right there. I believe there's also, if you just go to bushidocode.com slash, if you just go to bushidocode.com, there'll be a link for the book too.
Yeah, cool. And we'll definitely link that up.
Cool, man.
Now, just want to be mindful of your time. Are you almost at your sort of stop point? Have you got another 10 minutes, or
Yeah,
what's
I've
your?
got some time.
Yeah, cool.
We're good.
Um, yeah, one thing I was keen to get into the interview. I've got so many things. We might have to do a round two at some point because there's so many things I want to get
Why
through.
not?
But you mentioned we had a little exchange the other day by text, and you were talking about 2018 as a year for you. Like you said, you learned quite a lot of good lessons, and it was a good year for you in terms of personal development. I was thinking maybe if you could share some of your wins from 2018 or things you learned, and um, yeah, just sort of what you took away from the previous year. That would be great.
Yeah, man. So about 3 years ago, I started kind of publicly listing off my goals, and I'm learning so much from it. The first year, I've always done that. I've always been a goal setter, but I don't remember before those 3 years of publicly doing them. I don't remember ever achieving any of my goals. Right?
Mm.
Like I'm sure I went out with good intentions, but I think I was like the majority where, the first 3 weeks of the new year, I was gung ho. And then come fourth week rolls around and I forget about my goals until, 50 weeks later, right? When the new year rolls around again. And it's usually the same goals, right? Like get healthy, be lean, make more money. And, so the first year I did this, I had 20 goals on my list, and and I learned a lot from that, and that was way too many goals, right? And I think I accomplished 11 of my goals, and which was great because, like I said, before that, I don't remember ever which goals I'd ever actually accomplished. But because I had some level of accountability, I actually got almost more than half of them done, which as a ratio is not very good, only 50%.
Mm.
But it's actually
Still,
pretty
it's good.
great because I got a bunch done, right? So the next year around, I was like, okay, 20 goals is too much. I actually even had, I was kind of in shock at one point in the first year. It was October, so I only had a few years left. And I was like, here I am, the Bushido Code guy, can't even do his goals, right? Like I didn't have most of my goals done. I only had a few months, and I was kind of paralyzed by the thought of it. And it didn't do anything for weeks. I remember that. I was like, this is not working. This is stressful. So the next year, each year I have a theme. The next year I made this theme called less is more, right? Or another way of putting that was maximize by minimizing.
Mm.
And basically what that meant was that I was going to focus on a lot less. but I was going to put more into those fewer things. So the next year I did 8 goals, right? They're pretty substantial goals, more substantial than some of my, the ones that were the 20 in the 20 list. And it proved to be really successful, but I still learned some stuff from that. I think my ratio there was that I had 5 goals that I did get done, 1 that I didn't get done, and 2 that were still in progress that just needed more time. And so my biggest learning last year was that, say no to most of the stuff. Like really figure out what is going to really move the needle in your life. What are the 1, maybe 2 things, like especially when you're starting out, what's the 1 or 2 things that are going to really move the needle in your life, and focus on that. And then create a plan to get it done, right? Like if you just kind of put it out there, you need to write your goal down. Absolutely. You need to tell someone else that where it's an account, where you have some level of accountability, right? You don't have to make it public, but tell someone in your life that, hey, you know what, this goal is really important to me, and I would love your accountability, right? That way, and tell someone who is going to actually hold you accountable and not just be soft about it, right? Because with me and my friends, when we do this now, there's a level of, hey, dude, like, what the fuck? I thought you wanted to do this, right? You told me you wanted to do it, so what's going on? So that is one of the key things I learned is you don't have to do everything. You just have to do a couple things, the right things, and they will really move the needle and make a difference in the quality of your life.
It's a good lesson, because it's so common that, like, I've been guilty of in the past as well. You think you've got a whole year so you can achieve so much, so you set 20 goals or whatever, and then you just do a little bit here and there and don't really accomplish anything, and then you look back at the end of the year and you've just done nothing, and it's the worst feeling. So better to just have 1 or 2 things, just do it well, and then go from there.
Yeah. Speaking to that point, I just saw a video by a guy named Sam Owens. He owns a business called consulting.com. I love some of his content. He had this one graphic that he drew, and it was basically a circle, right? I'll see if I can, for people with video, there was a circle with arrows kind of coming out of it, right? And each arrow was a kind of an interest or a goal, right? And each arrow was about an inch in length coming out of the circle. And he's like, well, this person has, 6 or 7 things that they're trying to work towards. And then he drew another circle right next to it. And he's like, this person only has 1 thing. And the arrow was 7 inches long, right? And that gave me a really strong visual. And it's like, okay, either you can do 7 things or 20 things and move an inch in all of them, or you find out what's the 1 thing that's really going to make the biggest difference in your life, and you double, triple down on that, right? And you move the needle, and that's when you really see results. And I couldn't agree with that more. And I just thought that was a really nice visual to, especially taken at the start of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good way to look at it. And I'm familiar with Sam Ovens. He's really, I've really find the stuff he puts out really insightful. Is definitely worth checking out if you can follow him on Instagram or YouTube, Sam Ovens. So that's awesome. Any other main learnings or lessons from 2018? Is that your biggest one?
Yeah, another one was that so there's the do less, right? Less is more. And that kind of comes again from the design, from my teachings in education and design. When you have a logo that's got way too many components and colors and shapes and gradients and stuff, it's hard to remember, right? Visually, you're asking me to remember a lot, right? The reason why brands like, the Nike check mark or FedEx or these brands work well, it's because they're minimal, they're simple, there's less going on. Less is definitely more. The second thing that I learned was even if you put pen to paper and say, this is my goal, you need to go beyond that. You need to go, what are the steps to achieving that goal, right? Because I could have this goal to be in the best shape of my life, right? But if I don't have a measurable number, what is the best shape of my life? Well, is it under this percentage of body fat? Is it to gain mass, maybe for some people, right? Get bigger. What is it? Put a number on that. And how do I do it? Do I need to hire a personal trainer? Do I need to buy a set of weights here from the home because whatever, right? Do I need to get a different gym membership? Do I need to have a meal plan? What are all the things that go into this? Write all that down on paper and start crossing off that list. Just a kind of a goal on paper without a plan, it's not much, man. The cliche is that if it's just a wish at that point, right? And I have to agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Learning how to actually set proper goals and the steps to doing that, what the goal is in the first place, and then how you're going to achieve it. You got to do it, otherwise it just it never happens, as you said. So it's a good lesson. Good lesson.
Absolutely. I think having again, following a mentor's kind of framework on how to goal set is really important. Having that accountability partner check in with you every month, maybe even every week. I recommend most of my guys to do it every week. What are you going to do this week, right? And then you send your accountability partner a snap of what your week is supposed to look like. And then next week, you guys have a 5-10-minute call, 15-minute call on what got done, what didn't get done, and why it didn't get done. And just having that kind of some kind of framework in place helps us a lot, because in like this modern day and age, we've got way too many distractions, right? 100%. We think we want this, but then another shiny object comes, we go over there, and then it's too much. And less is more combined with a plan, and you're setting yourself up for success.
Awesome, love it. Well, coming up to the tail end of the interview here, but just a few quick questions for you.
Yeah, man.
Keen to know, I guess what's coming up for you in 2019? What are going to be your main projects this year? What are you working towards? Any big things happening this year for you?
Yeah, definitely. So one of my big goals is to sell my store, sell the e-commerce store, and that's because I grew this store out of a need, right? Out of a financial need. I needed cash. I needed to make money. I needed a business, and it didn't come out of a passion. It's not that I'm not passionate about drop shipping. I'm not passionate about camping pants, right? Like, it's not my thing. And so what I'm noticing is that, if I'm to really follow my own advice, and that is less is more, I need to get rid of the store so that I can focus on my passion project, and that is the Bushido Code. So one of my goals this year is to sell that store. Me and my brother both agree. We've learned tons from it. It served us well, but it's now time to sell it. And with that extra free time, I'm working on a couple of different projects, both of which I'm really, really passionate about. One is one that you actually helped me with a lot, and that was I've always wanted to make a a physical version of the Bushido Code and create a actual journal out of it. And so right now I'm working on that, and it's called Plan and Conquer. And Plan and Conquer is, basically a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. And it's that you set out for an aim, we create a plan for it, and then there's all the steps to conquer it, all within one journal. And the journal asks you the questions that make you think and commit to a plan of action, right? And one of the most common things I've gotten in return from putting the Bushido Code out there is how successful the journaling component of the Bushido Code has been. And so I think it's almost a no-brainer to release a physical copy of that. So that's my one of my biggest commitments for the new year, and I'm extremely excited about that. The second thing I'm working on is another kind of passion project. And in the past, I've worked on apps as being a designer. It's kind of been something that I've learned and been curious about. In 2011, I designed an alarm clock app that was a cool learning process. And now I'm creating a new app with all the stuff that I've learned, and it's essentially a brain training app. The name we're using right now is Primr. spelled Primr, so Primr without the E. And essentially it uses binaural beats together with meditation to help you either fall asleep or help alleviate your anxiety or depression, helps you focus, helps you be more creative. So there's a couple of different ways that we're taking it. And this is a project I'm really, really curious about because I've always really been into kind of manipulation of the mind, right? Whether that's through drinking coffee, or whether that's through meditation, or jumping in a sensory deprivation tank, which I got introduced to years ago and I love, or whether that's through listening to binaural beats, all that stuff. So I think it's really, really cool that we have this technology now that we can actually put ourselves into a certain state of mind. And not many people, there's no app on the App Store that is doing it the way we're doing it. And that's using a technology called Beacon, which is a chime. Like when you're doing these meditations, oftentimes you have to focus on either your breath or something to that effect, right? In this app, you're actually focusing on a beacon. And that is a certain chime that is going off again and again that you're literally counting. And your only responsibility is sit there peacefully and count how many chimes are going off while this binaural beat is working. And the combination of focusing on that single pointed focus of that number while hearing a binaural beat does something really, really cool and special. And we're getting some really good feedback from our users. So I'm really excited to really catapult that project ahead this year. I spent some of last year designing it, and it's kind of still at its rudimentary levels, and it's free for anyone interested to check it out. I'd love you guys' feedback. Again, it's Primr, Primr. And this year, so I just want to polish that off and really make it a substantial thing. So those are the two big things that I'm working on this year.
That's awesome. Exciting year. And is Primr, is that on the App Store, or is
that's
there
on
a
the
website?
App Store right now? Yeah, that's only available on the Apple App Store. I'm an Android guy myself. I used to be an Apple guy forever, but I do like there's a ton of stuff I like about Apple's design language, and also my good friend and business partner with that project is an Apple developer, so it's just natural to start there, perfect the product before we go on to Android. And that's just, I mean, again, life lessons, right? If you do the same thing on two different platforms, it's twice the amount of work with really half the amount of reward, right? So if you can master it on one platform, take all those learnings and put it onto the next platform, that's the better way of working it, and that's our approach right now.
Awesome. Good plan. Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be checking that out. And
cool, man.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked you or that you want to make sure that you share with the audience before we finish up here? Or do you think we've covered?
I think we've covered a good amount, man. Yeah, I think if anyone has any questions or if they want to get in touch, I do like some stuff with like if you have an idea for a brand that you want to start or anything like that, I do some consulting. So I mean that's kind of my background, design and marketing, and that's often a place that a lot of people have trouble with. So be sure to reach out to me. I can try to do my best to help you with that. On the Bushido Code, I've also got a personal Instagram that is Sunny all year, all one word, Sunny all year. But can't think of anything else other than that.
Awesome. So the best way to connect would be either your personal Instagram or the Bushido Code Instagram. That'd be the best way to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, we'll link them up, so they'll be in the show notes if anyone wants to reach out. Sunny's helped me a lot with stuff, and he's an interesting guy. So definitely go check him out, give him a follow. And there's so much that I had notes on that we didn't actually get through that I wanted to talk about. So I think we'll definitely have to have you back on again at some point so we can keep having a yarn, because it's been good. So
of course, man,
Sunny, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and have a great day. Thanks again.
Cheers, brother. I appreciate it so much, man.
All right, cool.
All right,
thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.